Hey there students, Mr. Skaggs here with another video lesson for you. So on the screen you see the things that you need for this lesson: pencil, highlighter, composition book, and your West African Kingdom notes. So if you would, go ahead. We're going to be covering standards 723, 724. If you haven't already, open to the front of your composition book and highlighted those two standards, please do so now. We'll be doing that at the beginning of every lesson, whether on video or in class. We're always highlighting our standards. So go ahead and do that really quick. Okay, that was pretty quick. So today we're going to be looking at standards 723 and 724. We're going to analyze the growth of the kingdoms of Ghana, Mali, Songhai, including cities such as Djenne and Timbuktu as centers of trade, culture, and learning. We're going to describe the role of the Trans-Saharan caravan trade, that's fun to say, in the changing religious and cultural characteristics of West Africa and in the exchange of salt, gold, and slaves. Before we get started, quick reminder, in case you didn't know, geography matters. Hashtag. So here's a quick little map of Africa and a few things I would like us to go over real quick, because as we just finished up doing our atlas with all of our maps in it, I said you need to know these places. So let's take just a minute, hit a couple things real quick, and then we'll jump into our lesson, because geography matters, especially today. So if you were looking at Africa right here, this big portion of it is a particular type of land. And it's a very dry area. What would that be called? You got it. That's the Saharan Desert. The Sahara Desert, however I said it. If you look right here, we got a very long river, super long river actually. I heard you say it. That's the Nile River. Look over here, we've got another river, runs off into the Gulf of Guinea, which is another spot you need to know. That's the Niger River right here. And we got two cities, which are pretty pertinent to today. Is Timbuktu would be right here. You guessed it. Good job. And this city right here, what city do you think that is? I heard it. That's Djenne. So those are the kind of the geography kind of things to kind of do a refresher with. We'll do some more of that later on. So today we're talking about Mali, Ghana, Songhai, two of the most famous kingdoms of Western Africa. And we're going to start out with the first one of Ghana. Ghana was around between 400 and 1200. They became important trade empire due to its location between the Sahara Desert and salt and gold mines of West Africa. And just as a reminder, as we do these lectures, you need to look and see the words that are in gold or yellow will be the blanks to go into your notes. So this kingdom of Ghana would grow very wealthy because it taxed traders as they passed through their empire right here between the salt and gold mines. As you go through to get to the Sahara Desert, you'd pass through and you would pay money to use someone's roads. That is how they made money, by kind of having toll pay roads that they would tax traders as they came through. And they used this money to pay for armies that then took control of more land which had more trade routes on it, expanding out their territory, as you see the size of it right here. And with their leadership, the kings of Ghana converted to Islam to improve relationships with Muslim traders. This is a very common practice throughout history when you're trying to have a better relationship, trying to have a better working time with either another country or any sort of business deal. You try to find a way to relate to who you're working with. And what better way to relate to someone than to share a religion? And Islam would come from the Middle East, if you can imagine, it's over here, across the Sahara Desert and into West Africa, because the traders, the businessmen who would move around, the merchants, they were Islamic, and they would share their faith as they traveled and did business. And so this was a sort of a relationship building thing to switch religions. But the people of Ghana were not mandated to follow the religion of Islam. They still kept many of their traditional religions that they practiced, such as ancestor worship, animism. We've talked about those before. So that's Ghana. That's your first kingdom. It's going to you're going to see very similar trends with most of these kingdoms. But you will notice they're going to get bigger. So next up, second kingdom is Mali, from around 1200 to 1450. It is going to come about because they conquered Ghana. And they would grow even more wealthy through trade of gold and salt, similar to Ghana. And their key trade cities that were established during the Malian Empire would be the cities of Timbuktu, and Djenne, or just Djenne, if you want to take the D off. Two very important cultural and trading cities within their empire. Along the Niger River, you see, runs right through the middle of their empire. Very important for trade to use water to move items. And King Mansa Musa used his wealth to support Muslim artists and scholars who built many mosques and centers of learning in Timbuktu. Yes. So it wasn't just you came to Timbuktu to trade, to do business, but it was also a place to go and learn as well, especially in learning about the Quran and Islam. Last one, Songhai is the last kingdom. As you can see, it's kind of the biggest one out of them all. And it's going to be around from about 1000 to 1600. There's some overlap between Mali and Songhai, because you're going to see those are we'll see here in a second. So in 1337, the region of Songhai was a part of Mali, but it would break away after the death of Mansa Musa. And in 1464, the leaders of Songhai took over the city of Timbuktu, the largest, most important city of Mali. And after that, they began to take control of the gold and salt trade along the Niger River. They controlled the city. They controlled the most important trading center on that river, and it was just natural they would take control of the whole thing. And so this would become the largest of the West African empires under the control of their Islamic leader, Oski Mohammed, was their most famous leader in the Songhai. And Oski would continue the tradition of Mansa Musa, and built schools for learning in Timbuktu, in particular a university in Timbuktu that was there to particularly study the Quran. So those are our three kingdoms. And just a quick question I want you to think to yourself, what do these three kingdoms have in common? I want you to pause the video, look back through your notes, and if you want to just kind of jot down on the margin of your paper, just the side, what do these three kingdoms have in common? All right, now that you're back, what do they have in common? Well, the first thing they have in common, you can see, is that they grew wealthy through trade. That's how they made their fame, made their money, was through trade of gold and salt. Cool. One more thing they had in common was religion. These were Islamic kingdoms, even though not everyone was forced to convert to Islam. The predominant religion of these kingdoms was Islam. So that's what they had in common. Next question I want you guys to think about. How did trade interactions with other people affect these three kingdoms? How did trade interactions with other people affect these three kingdoms? Now that's a duh question, because obviously they interacted, they made money, and they changed religions, or they added religions to what they already had. But there's one more interaction with outside people, particularly from the Middle East, that is going to affect the people of West Africa, and it's going to move on farther than that from there. And the next thing that was added from these interactions was the practice of slavery. So slavery was a common practice throughout the world. Through centuries, slavery has been a common practice, but specifically in Africa, slaves were usually prisoners of war. So you would go to war with a neighboring town or kingdom, and sometimes when you would conquer that particular group of people, you would take some of their citizens, sometimes all of them, and you would force them into slavery, force them into forced labor for the victoring kingdom, the victoring city, would use that. And how this would then expand out is that the trade of humans, the trade of slaves, would increase with contact with Muslim traders. These traders were dealing in things like gold, silver, salt. They would have, many times would have fabrics from the east they would bring, various things. And so adding to that sort of catalog of goods that they would trade and move around, slaves were just added into that as well. And what would happen that would expand this even farther was when the Portuguese would explore the Horn of Africa and go down the western coast of Africa, and they would discover that slaves were used to buy and trade these people, it seems. And so the Portuguese, barbecue, I guess. And so the Portuguese would then, they took slaves back to Europe to work on lands for them, to work in houses, but then they would later even expand it farther into the development of plantations, which were being put on islands in the Caribbean, is where slavery would expand even farther. So, going back to our standard, going all the way back here. So, our two standards today was to analyze the growth of the kingdoms of Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, including the cities of Djenne, Timbuktu, centers of trade. And then also, it was to describe how trade with Trans-Saharan trade would change the religious and cultural characteristics. So that's our two standards we just covered. And so exit ticket for you guys. And so your exit ticket, usually in class we'll have an exit ticket, and it is you write it down, you hand it in. Can't really do that over video. So I've got a couple options listed that you can use to submit your exit ticket to me, but you will need to do that before you come back to class. So you have the options listed in Google Classroom on how you're to do that, so please follow those. So your exit ticket that you need to answer and send in to me: what were the causes of growth for the kingdoms of Ghana, Mali, Songhai, and how did Trans-Saharan caravan trade change the religious and cultural characteristics of West Africa? That's your question. If you need to pause and read that for a minute, just fine. It's in your notes. Look back through there. Submit your exit ticket one of the ways that you can, and then we will continue moving on from there. Once you're done with this paper, it should be filled in. You'll need to cut this out, put it into your composition book as your notes, and we'll see you next time, guys.